The FCC consists of 5 commissioners, each appointed for 5-year terms which overlap each other and presidential administrations. These commissioners are appointed by the president and confirmed by the U.S. Senate and could be removed if impeached by the Senate. Why the December 14th vote is almost certain: the commissioners are always 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and a chairman from the president's party. So that party always enjoys a 3-to-2 majority. The current chairman is Ajit Pai, who was first appointed a commissioner by President Obama in 2012 and elevated to chairman by President Trump this past January. The FCC is what's called an independent agency, meaning it operates outside the cabinet departments. Other independent agencies include the CIA, the Postal Service, and Social Security Administration. But how independent are these agencies, and how will these new Internet rules change how you access and what you pay for the Internet? We invited Chairman Pai to join us, and he did not reply. So let's ask Patrice Onwuka, Senior Policy Analyst at Independent Women's Forum, and attorney and professor Stephen J.J. Wiseman. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Patrice,
good to be with you.
Open Internet rules the FCC is about to undo had classified the Internet the way the phone companies were way back when, as a utility. The Internet is so part of the fabric of our lives now. Is it not a utility?
I think it's a mistake to classify it as the way you'd classify a telephone company. And the reason why this was done was actually more of a political move. The previous FCC chairman under President Obama, tried to bring suit against another broadband company and failed to do so because he didn't have that kind of the authority. And so he said, well, why don't I change the authority and go have them reclassified in a way that allows the FCC now to be able to really regulate the internet and regulate broadband companies. This really muddles the water, and I think you're seeing the FCC take over a realm that had already been regulated or was policed, so to speak, by the FTC. So now you pretty much have 2 different federal agencies going back and forth. And really, when you think about it, there were no issues about competitiveness or anti-competitiveness before these open internet regulations came to be. So why was this even necessary?
Yeah, the 3 legs in that stool of open internet are no blocking, no throttling, and no preferential high-speed areas. Succinctly explain what these mean.
So really, these are just tools for broadband companies. Think about Verizon, Comcast, to determine how fast or slow you can get access to different websites you want to be at. So what's ended up happening here is you have your internet providers on one side versus your internet content creators, your Facebooks, your Twitters,
Netflix.
your Netflix. And so these companies are saying, hey, without regulations, your internet providers could say, I'm going to slow down the speed to somebody who's watching Netflix. We've seen even porn websites coming out and saying, if you want your porn to be downloaded at the regular speeds, you better support net neutrality rules. And I think it's an overblown, hyper over-the-top way of just trying to maintain regulations that didn't exist before, and the internet blossomed without them. So why do we need them now?
And in the internet future, which we'll soon confront, they could charge you more if you opt into higher speed, right?
Potentially. But when you think about it, why would these companies, once these regulations are scaled back, go back and now try to institute some of these policies?
Right.
It would automatically, you have federal agencies coming after them for that kind of anti-competitive behavior that they were trying to go after.
Well, Steve, actions like this begin with a public comment period, and when we, the public, are invited to weigh in. And as that video mentioned, the New York State Attorney General says he smells a rat. What's up with that?
He does smell a rat, and he's not getting great cooperation from the FCC, which has decided to just not listen to any of the comments. And in fact, this is the way of the world right now. There are groups that can get bots of large numbers of computers to send in really the identical emails. And in this case, there were fake emails sent in, and we really don't know enough. There's been some recognition by the New York Attorney General. He focused on the the anti-net neutrality ones, but they showed the similarities to indicate where they came from, and that, frankly, these comments couldn't be trusted. It's interesting to note that polls show that the public is as much as 76% in favor of net neutrality, and it's a very, very important thing. And no, we don't trust the internet service providers, because when they weren't, when they didn't have the regulation, there was a period where Netflix was negotiating in regard to speed of their downloading, and their speed got downgraded until they agreed to pay a higher amount. This is what we are facing. Part of the problem is, of course, we have regulations that go back to 1934. But when you want to classify what is the internet, it is probably more of an important utility to us today than that telephone.
Way back when. Now, Steve, whenever a change like this threatens to rock the consumer's world, we're urged to call our senators and representatives if we fear it. Does the FCC's independent status firewall them from that pressure, or could Congress legislate net neutrality terms and by statute force the FCC to enforce them?
They could. First of all, there is nothing preventing Congress from doing that, from actually legislating this rather than leaving this as a subject to regulation to the FCC. They can also issue a resolution of disapproval by which they overturn the regulation. Both of these, are somewhat unlikely, but the public could influence Congress to take these steps, and yes, Congress could override the FCC.
Will this end up in court before the FCC can toss out the open internet rules, Steve?
Someone could go for a temporary injunction. I think it very well will end up in court if the vote goes as everyone expects on December 14th, but it'll be a long process. And the idea then will be, were these changes in the rules done in an arbitrary and capricious manner? Because it isn't just something that the FCC can just, without reason, change its mind because it just doesn't like it.
Right.
So it could end up in court.
Patrice, the previous chairman, Tom Wheeler, said he figures the job of the FCC is to represent the consumer. And he says, tragically, this decision is only for the benefit of largely monopoly services that deliver the internet to the consumer. Your take?
I think that's great rhetoric, but that's wrong. I believe the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is the watchdog for consumers. And his heart may be in the right place, but I think his political motivations were not in the right place. And this became really just government overreach and a power grab from one agency to another. I do agree with my colleague here, though. Congress has an opportunity to step in and decide once and for all, so that you don't have in a change of administration another FCC saying, okay, we're going to go back and we're going to re-implement these. Let Congress decide. And I know Congress has a lot on its plate already.
Well, they do, but just as those who may be wary of this change should call their senator and congressman, you would similarly urge, if you like what you hear, you should reach out to your member as well, huh?
Well, that's true. And I mean, going back to the bots that were apparently hitting up the FCC's website, I mean, that's actually, those programs are used by groups on the left and the right for lots of different issues. And it's really just a way of saying, okay, we want you to comment. And I agree with whatever's being said. I'm going to check the box, and it goes off, and it becomes a comment. So whether all of these are fictitious comments, I'm not necessarily falling for the line that all 1.8 or 1.3 million of those comments are fake.
Fake news. Hey, Patrice and Steve, in that order, I'll put you on the spot. Predict, 1 year from today, will the internet be more expensive, less expensive, or the same?
The same.
The same, Steve?
A week from today, and then after that, it will be more expensive, and particularly as some of these internet service providers who are going to be regulating get into content and start competing. So eventually the consumer's going to pay.
Well, I want to round you both up again in a year. Let's see who was right. Thank you, Patrice Onwuka, Senior Policy Analyst at the Independent Women's Forum, and Stephen J.J. Wiseman, whose Scamicide.com can steer you clear of some con games the Grinch runs this time of year. I appreciate you both being here, and happy holidays.
You too.
And that is the big picture. For now, I'll be back here next Friday, and in the meantime, talk to me at Holland Cook on Twitter. Thanks for watching, and question more.